All right, all praise going on is most certainly due to the Most High. Yeah, the Elohim of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I want to say peace to each and every one of you in the name of his son. I always count it a blessing each and every single time that I can come before the priest the word, and never do I count it as a light thing to do so. In today's message, I'm going to deal with the headship of men, the spiritual headship of men. And this was inspired by things that I heard recently in the last day or so. And one thing I heard was that men need to be more emotional and lean more on their women in times of turmoil and trouble. And that I also heard this evening that over 100 people were shot in Chicago over this 4th of July weekend, and 19 people were killed. And it just brought to my mind, my thinking, that if men were operating in their proper headship, you wouldn't have the chaos that you have in our communities. You wouldn't have the turmoil that we have in our families. And as men, you don't go to your woman in times of turmoil and trouble. What you do, when you see turmoil, look at David. When you saw him in trouble, in those times of trouble, he on the run from Saul. Was he leaning on his woman, or was he leaning on the Lord? And that's who men go to, and that's because there is an order within the family, familial structure, and the men are at the head of that order as far as amongst human beings. So now, because you had the father, then you had the son, you had man, woman, and child. That's the order. So if that be the order, how are you going to your woman in times of trouble? When in times of trouble, when the family's in trouble, they should be looking to you. When they need direction, they should be looking to you. Nobody cares. I'm gonna be honest with you. They teaching men to cry, but at the same time, nobody cares about your feelings. Okay, so what you need to do is be strengthened in the Lord. That's where you need to get your strength from. And you need to be stronger in this day and age, not weaker. That's just a side note. But let's go to Ephesians, the 5th chapter, verse 22, and see the order of things, the spiritual head. It says, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. Okay, so you're supposed to submit yourselves to your own husbands. Then it says, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the savior of the body. Okay, so now the husband is the head of the wife. Okay, so the wife's supposed to obey her husband like she is obeying the Lord. And then it said, why? For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the savior of the body. Right? So you are the savior of the body. So why in the family, for the woman, she's looking to you. She's the weaker vessel. So, so why you trying to be more sensitive and emotional? You the one that's supposed to be the one that's supposed to be strong. He said, therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Right? So just like the church is supposed to be in subjection to the Lord, the woman is supposed to be in subjection to her husband. Then it said, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. See, notice even when Christ in his dark hour, he wasn't looking for some woman. He was praying to the Father. You understand? This is what men should be doing. And he made that sacrifice. Why? For his bride. So this is all back with what is being pushed today in society. Is not good in general for civilization to have weak men. If you have weak men in society, it's going to bring about hard times. If you have absent men in your family, it's going to bring about chaos in your community. Because men are the backbone. It's not women. Men are the backbone of the family. Men are the one that brings order. Men are the ones that bring protection and provision. That's what you're supposed to do. And that's spiritually the case, that you are the head. So let's just show you some examples of that. So this whole notion that, that you're supposed to be on equal footing with your wife or that's your partner. I hear that a lot. That's quite frankly, that's homosexual. That's gay. That whole notion of partner comes out of language from the LGBTQ community. No, it's an order of things. And in the family structure, the man is the head, and you are responsible. Just like going all the way back to Adam and Eve. Let's just show you that. When first of all, man had purpose before he had a woman. He had a mission in his life before he had a woman, and he made the woman as a helpmeet. Now, then he gave him instruction. He said, don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. So now, then what we know, she went to Satan, and then Adam, the Bible said, who was not deceived, went right along with it, and they communed with Satan. And then when the Lord asked, what hast thou done? He said, the woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the fruit, and I did eat. Of the tree, and I did eat. Well, that's irrelevant. You should have been like Job, who told his woman when she said, dost thou still retain thine integrity, curse God and die? He said, thou speakest as a foolish woman speaketh. What, shall we receive good from the Lord and not evil? And Job didn't sin with his lips. Why? Because he understood the order, because over him is the Lord. So now this is the first failure. Why? Because he was not operating, and we feel the consequences. See, when things are out of order, when you got weak men and masculine men or women and emasculated men, when in times of trouble and when you need order and direction, you're supposed to go to your woman and cry on her shoulder. That's all backward. That is all backward. The man is the spiritual head of the home. And you should be following the Lord. You shouldn't be following your woman. And this is the first lesson in the Bible. So when you don't follow the Lord and you follow your woman, then you're not operating, everything's out of order. That's chaos. And that's what Satan brought. And that's what's happening right now in society. That's why things are all messed up, because things are out of order. So if you don't understand that, you can't have peace. We have been dying ever since because a man followed his woman and relinquished his position as spiritual head. Because quite frankly, all of me for a true spiritual head, as far as the man, is you supposed to be following the Lord and taking and leading your family as you follow Christ. That's what you're supposed to do. And let's look at the example of men that did this. Let's go to Genesis, the 18th chapter. Genesis, the 18th chapter. I'll pick it up here in Genesis 18. And notice what the Lord said about Abraham. In verse 19, he said, for I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him. Okay? So he's talking about, he knows Abraham. He knows he's going to lead his household. Abraham wasn't following his woman. Spiritually, it said, and if I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken to him. See, Abraham is an example of that. Of what? Of being a proper spiritual head. That's what you're supposed to do as a man. Let's see another subtle example of this. This is Genesis 35. Genesis 35 and verse 1. So here his progeny, he's leading his family. Notice what he says here in verse 35 and 1. And God said unto Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there, and make there an altar unto God that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. Okay, so he's being obedient unto the Lord. And notice what he says. Verse 2, then Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean and change your garments. You have to sanctify. So sanctify yourselves. You have to put away that false worship. See, as a man, you can say that in your household. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really care what the state says. Right? This because how it's set up now, the state is over these marriages, and the state can come in and they've empowered the woman to tell you as a man what you can and cannot do. That is backwards. That is backwards. Can't no man come in your household and tell you anything. But the state does that, and the women allow that and go for it because it puts them in a position of power, which brings about, again, destruction and chaos. But I would say to a man that is in the truth, do not capitulate. Either she get with your program, even if she don't believe, you better act, you better do what I tell you to do. Or she could say, well, I'm going to do this. I'm taking the kids. I'm doing this. Do what you got to do. But I'm going to serve the Lord. And people in this house, you're not going to have peace bringing in pork ribs in the refrigerator, bringing in Christmas trees. I don't have to capitulate to your nonsense. I don't have to agree with your paganism. This is my house. Men need to act. See, all this stuff that's going on right now, it would actually end if men would actually just operate as men. So you've been given a right to operate by the Most High. You've been given a position by the Most High as spiritual head. Act in your position. But if you relinquish that position, you in trouble. That's like if you on a job and the boss say, I'm not going to be the boss anymore. Well, who's going to be the boss? We don't have a boss. You don't have order. People are not going to show up. People are not going to do their job. You're going to have all kind of stuff. Lunch breaks, 3 hours, all kind of stuff going to be going on. Why? Because the one that's supposed to be in charge isn't doing his job. Right? Well, that's on some job, right? Some factory or something like that. Well, this is within the family. And this is of the utmost importance for the larger society to operate like this. Let's go to Joshua. The book of Joshua, chapter 24. And let's notice this charge that Joshua gives unto the people. And I want us to pay close attention to what he says about his own house. So this is Joshua 24 and verse 14. So he charges them. He says, now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth. Right? And how do you serve him? His word is truth. As he says, sanctify them through that truth. That word is truth. Right? That's how you worship. But you have to worship him according to what he said. Right? As he told the woman at the well, you worship, you know not what. We know we worship for salvation is of the Jews. What was given to Israel, the lively oracles, the laws, statutes, commandments, judgments, ordinances. The way in which your man is supposed to worship the Lord is shown in the is shown in the word. So now let's pick it up at Joshua 14 at the top again. It says, now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your father served on the other side of the flood. So he's saying put away those false gods that your forefathers served on the other side of the Euphrates River. That was Abraham's father, Terah. He was worshiping falsely. They came out of Ur the Chaldees. He was a Chaldean, and they worship falsely there. That's the hub of all false worship. But Abraham made a decision. He heard the call of the Lord, and he went after the true and living God and put away those things. Again, see, spiritually speaking, you're responsible. And so Abraham, when he came into what truth was, he put away falsehood. He left that. And that's what Joshua is charging them, because he came out of Babylon. Physically, he crossed over the Euphrates River. But spiritually, he's a Hebrew because he crossed from pagan false worship unto the truth. So now he says, and if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, I'm in verse 15. And peace to everybody that's listening. Choose you this day whom ye will serve. I'm gonna just say something real quick. Adrian K put in here, I was just watching your response video to quote, my wife asked me to leave. That's just speaking to how things are totally butt backwards. How a woman gonna ask a man to leave? That's like a child asking a parent to leave the house. I'm gonna need you to get out, mama. I'm gonna need you, daddy. You gotta go. That's the same thing, because it's actually the man is the head of that whole house. That's see, everything is backwards. See, you notice Joshua's wife not making a charge here. She's not making a charge. That's like, so understand, as a man, that's your wife, and those are your kids, and that is your household. That don't mean a woman don't have a place in it, but the order is things are in your possession, not the other way around. Not the other way around. And when a woman is talking about a household, it's her house. She's a part of a household. Like you could say, oh, that's my job, or that's my place of work right there. Do you own it though? No, you are part of it. The owner of it is the head of that household. You understand? One that can say, these are my employees. But that's that mindset. Only way a woman can tell you not to leave is if you've been foolish enough to try to live in a woman's house, or again, the state where a woman could take everything you have or a lot of what you have, or tell you to get out. We'll call the police and the police will tell you to leave. See, she could use the state. See, things are backward. So you've been given this power by the state. People need to pay attention to what's going on and stop complaining. And actually, men just need to start operating in manhood, but they've been indoctrinated. They've been indoctrinated, again, to think that weakness is good, to think that happy wife, happy life, to think, well, I'm serving her. I'm here to serve her. That's not the truth. That is not the truth. Are we equal partners? That is not the truth. That is not the truth. Or if I just make her happy, everything's going to be all right. That is not the truth. And quite frankly, she don't even want you to do that. Usually when women, that's why you always say, you don't hear men saying this. You hear women say this a lot. I need a man that's going to put me in my place when I get out of pocket. You don't hear men saying that. Why? Because just like a child understands with all their complaining and what they say they want to do when they act, what they want you to actually do is be a parent. Why? Because they understand deep down inside that's what love is, not allowing you to go out there and destroy yourself. If you don't operate in the spiritual headship of a man, you can destroy your whole family. And we, as the offspring of Adam, know this firsthand. We have been dying ever since our father, the father of us all, black, white, red, and brown, yellow, Adam sinned. And his children have been suffering. And he opened the door for chaos and destruction, following his wife, relinquishing his spiritual headship. So now it says again in verse 15, and if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye will serve, whether the gods which your father served on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. And let me say this, it is not enough just to listen to what I'm saying and know better and not do it. You need to implement this in your home. And it simplifies everything. Why? Because all you got to do is worry about serving the Lord, pleasing him. Because in pleasing the Lord, you're not going to mistreat your wife. Pleasing the Lord, you're not going to mistreat your kids. Pleasing the Lord, you're going to do what you're supposed to do as a man. But if you are weak and if you are afraid of your woman and displeasing her, or you don't understand that you are responsible as a spiritual head where you lead your family, again, I keep saying this, you will bring chaos. So he says you need to put away those false gods that were in Babylon. You need to put away those false gods or don't even deal with the false gods in the Amorites in whose land we dwell. Right? He says, but you need to deal with false gods of Egypt. He said, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. He made a decision. I don't care what your situation is. I don't care if your wife does not believe. You tell her, this is what we're doing in my house. And if she is fool enough to tear down a house and trying to control you, the house will be so be it. If she gonna rip the relationship apart through the power of the state, so be it. But do not capitulate. You can't bring this false worship in here. You can't bring anything that's this swine up in here. You can't do this up in here. This is my house too. No, it's not. See, and men scared to do that. Men scared to do that. I'm gonna put the verses on here, brother. But that is where we going. Job 1. Job 1. And here we see again an example of spiritual headship. This is Job. This is Job 1:1. It said there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, one that feared God and eschewed evil. And there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. His substance also was 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels and 500 yoke of oxen and 500. Hey, let me tell y'all something. Don't put another verse up here. You want to teach? Go teach on your own platform. Don't put another verse on here. His substance also was 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels and 500 yoke of oxen and 500 she-asses and a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men of the East. Where else would you do that foolishness? You wouldn't do that nowhere else. You wouldn't go in the classroom and start just telling the teacher what. No, this ain't that kind of platform. Again, we do, and that's because we doing what? Things in order. So that this man was the greatest of all the men of the East, and his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. And it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. Why? Because he was the spiritual head, right? Over his family. So he's concerned about their spiritual well-being. Let's go to Deuteronomy. See, this is what a man is supposed to do. As a spiritual head, you need to be concerned about where your family is spiritually. You need to be concerned with, are they serving the Lord properly? And that is on you. That is on you. You can't put it on anybody else. See, manhood comes with great responsibility. Manhood comes with great responsibility. We're in Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. So he says here, in Deuteronomy 4, in verse 5, he says, now Moses, he said, behold, I've taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that ye should do so on the land whither ye go to possess it. Right? So he's charging the people. He says, keep therefore and do them. Why? He said, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. See, that's the wisdom that you have. It's wise to do what the Lord says. You can be wise and knowledgeable by default, simply by doing what the Lord said to do. Understanding can come later. You can have a fear of the Lord just to do what he says. That's why I said that's the beginning of knowledge. Then you start to know, then you keep doing it, then you begin to understand, then you have the wisdom to apply what you know and understand. But what did that start with? Humility to just say, I'm gonna fear the Lord and keep his commandments. So now he said, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. See, and other people would observe us and see how you're supposed to serve the Lord, and then see you prospering because of it. See, right now, we are not. We got 100 or so killed or shot in Chicago over the weekend because they are celebrating a time that commemorates a time when we were still in shackles. Dumb, right? He says, For what nation is there so great who hath God so nigh or near unto them as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law, which I said before you this day? Only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life. Then he said something, but teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons. See, you have to teach your sons. That is on you. You have to be the spiritual head of your family. That is on you. Let's go to 1 Corinthians. Let's see another example of this. This is in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians, the 14th chapter. And here, notice what Paul says, again, to keep things in order. He says, I'm going to pick it up at verse 29. 1 Corinthians 14 and 29, he says, let the prophet speak 2 or 3 and let the other judge. Well, let me go back a little bit because just give you some context of what's happening. He said, how is it then, brethren, when ye come together, every one of you hath the song, hath the doctrine, hath the tongue, hath the revelation, hath an interpretation. He said, let all things be done unto edifying. Right? So he said, man, everybody got something. Right? It's not even proper that everybody should just be speaking. So he's saying, if you're going to do something, because a lot of times people just want to do something to be seen, to do something to show that they know something, to do something to put it in other people's mind how righteous they are. But he said, let all things be done unto edifying. That's the whole point of ministry. Otherwise, and that's to show the effectiveness of what's said, it is the edification that comes from it. So he said, if any man, so you shouldn't hear some teaching and have more misunderstanding than before. No, there should be some edification. There should be some growth. He said, if any man speaking an unknown tongue, just a side note, that's what like I heard it say, and this stick with me, this sister, she wasn't talking about me, but she talking about a teacher. She said, yeah, he taught something and he taught and used the exact same verses he used the last time he taught it. But was it true though? You see these men, these apostles consistently bringing the things into reminding you of things. That's how the Lord, when he would talk to, if you ever pay attention to the dialogue that the Lord had, he kept reminding the people. The apostles, they said, let me put you in remembrance. I'm going to remind you. It's not like you got it one time and got everything. Was it true though? I remember, another thing sticks out to me. Years ago, I heard a teacher say, man, you learn so much, and then it's things that you forget, and they come back around. You're like, man, I forgot that was there. But anyway, he said, if a man speaking an unknown tongue, let it be by two, or at the most by three, and that by course, and let one interpret. Why? So you can have some order, right? Unlike what you got in churches, these Christian churches today. Then he said, but if there be no interpreter, let him keep silence in the church and let him speak to himself and to God. Why? Because if they can't understand what you're saying, if they don't understand the language or the tongue in which you're speaking, it can't edify them. That's how you know this whole notion of this Bible that you hear people talking about in tongues, and it's not a recognized language. That's how you know it's falsehood. He said, now notice what he says here. Let the prophet speak 2 or 3 and let the other judge. Okay? Because he said, if anything be revealed to another that sitteth by, let the first hold his peace. He's trying to get order. Then he says, for ye may all prophesy one by one, that all may learn and all may be comforted. And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. Then he said something here. He said, let your women keep silence in the churches. Right? So now, concerning these things, this is in the context of what he's saying. He said, let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law. What is that talking about? Hold your finger here. Genesis 3 and verse 16. It says, unto the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception, which he talks about in another place in the New Testament, Paul does. He said, in sorrow thou shalt bring forth children. Then he says something, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Not the other way around. Right? So he says, let your women keep silence in the churches. We talking about spiritual matters here. He said, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law. Now, what about if they want to know something? He said, and if they will learn anything, let them do what? Ask their husbands at home. Why? He your spiritual head. For it is a shame for women to speak in the church. Not that she can't say a word in the church in regard to these things. You got something to say about what was said, talk to him about it. It didn't even say talk to the minister. It said ask your husband. Why? Because you're actually talking about teacher. I had another teacher, he said to me, he wouldn't even sit between a man and his wife. Why? Because he understood the closeness that was there. Now, a man and a wife can get some counsel from a minister, but ultimately, it's that man and that woman who are one. The man is the spiritual head, and you can't forget that. Otherwise, you have chaos. That's what happens when you fail to deal as the spiritual head. So with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we're at the Household of Faith. Meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel. And again, we meet every Sabbath, which is Saturday, at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana, at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We also meet. Let me read this real quick. Let me read this. This is one more thing. This is Numbers 30. Because again, just as a man being a spiritual head, this is Numbers 30, and I'm gonna pick it up at verse 9. It said, but every vow of a widow and of her that is divorced. This is concerning vows. Now, I want you to pay attention to what it says and pay attention to the position of people. It says, wherewith they have bound their soul shall stand against her. Okay, so a widow don't have a husband. Okay, we got women running around here today saying that their husband is crying. Like, that's not, like, individually, that don't apply to you. You don't have a head. You simply don't have one. But now he said, and if she vowed, so you're trying to make it into something that's not. But nevertheless, he said, and if she vowed in her husband's house, or bound her soul by a bond with an oath, and her husband heard it, and held his peace at her, and disallowed her not, then all her vows shall stand. Every bond wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. So when she was married, if she made a vow and her husband heard the vow, what did that mean? If he didn't say anything against the vow, now she's not making a vow to another person, just a vow she making to the Lord. If she makes a vow to the Lord, that's why he tell you later, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. But nevertheless, in the New Testament it says that. But if she makes a vow and he doesn't if he does not nullify that vow, she has to keep that vow, right? But if her husband have utterly made them void on the day that he heard it, meaning when he heard the vow, not when he see the circumstances, right? But rather when he heard her make the vow, and he said, no, you're not doing that. He said, then whatsoever proceeded, but if her husband have utterly made them void on the day he heard them, then whatsoever proceeded out of her lips concerning her vows or concerning the bond of her soul shall not stand. Her husband had made them void, and the Lord shall forgive her, even though she's making it with the Lord. That shows you what? That shows you that the man is the spiritual head of this woman, that y'all not equal. And not only that, because you'll hear men try to say, or women try to say, you're not my daddy. No, you're not physically her father. You are in the position of a father as spiritual head, because prior to the husband coming into play, the man, the father was the head of his daughter. Now let's read this here. Let's read this here. It says, I should have read this in verse 3. It said, if a woman also vow to the Lord and bound herself by bond being in her father's house in her youth, and her father hear her vow, and her bond wherewith she had bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace at her, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she had bound her soul shall stand. It's only good. Like if he hear it, it's good if he don't say anything about it. But if her father disallow her in the day that he heareth not any of her vows or of her bonds wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand, and the Lord shall forgive her because her father disallowed her. So you got the daughter here. I'm about to, I read the vow of the widow, but when she was in her husband's house, right? So now, if whatever she vowed in her husband's house, it would stand. If he heard it, he said it could stand. But if he disavowed it, it couldn't. If he disallowed it, it couldn't stand. Same thing with the married woman. Verse 6. And if she had at all an husband when she vowed or uttered out of her lips wherewith her she bound her soul, and her husband heard it and held his peace at her in the day that he heard it, then her vow shall stand, and her bonds wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband disallowed her on the day that he heard it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered with her lips, wherewith she bound her soul of none effect, and the Lord shall forgive her. Think about that. Think about that. How the man is the spiritual head. And if you truly understand that the man is the spiritual head, you will understand what I'm about to read here in 1 Peter. And this is it. 1 Peter 3. When he talks about a woman being in subjection unto her husband, he says in chapter 3 and verse 1, likewise, 1 Peter 3 and 1, likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wise. So he said you can prick his conscience by your manner of living if he does not believe. He said, while they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear. So now think about the mindset here of humility, right? Just like the humility that the children of Israel should have showed to their husband, who was the Lord. But it said, whose adorning, let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair and of wearing of gold or putting on of apparel. See that it's not about that. He said, what is it about? Verse 4, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, and that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. So God is looking at you. Then he says something, for after this man in the old time, the holy women also who trusted in God did what? Adorn themselves with some silver and gold. No, he's talking about with that meek and quiet spirit. He said, being in subjection unto their what? Own husbands. See, you're gonna be judged and looked at by how you operating based on the position that you're in. So if you're a man not holding your position as the spiritual head, you're gonna be held accountable. If you're a woman not operating your proper position and not being obedient unto your husband, the Lord looking at you. Then it said, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. Right? She called him Lord or master. That's what she called him. It said, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well and are not afraid with any amazement. Right? So that's what you're supposed to do. So now you're supposed to be in subjection to the one that is your spiritual head. Then it said, likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them, with who? With women, according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife. That don't mean because you the head, you disrespect your wife at all. He said, as unto the what? Weaker vessel. And as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Yeah, you heirs together, but y'all not 50-50. That's not what this book is saying. And men need to hold it together. Men need to be in a proper position. This is not the time for weak men. This is not the time for spiritually dense men. This is not the time for men to be derelict in their duty. You must lead as the head. And with that, brothers and sisters, so is my prayer that you will edify.